Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Lynn Allen. I'm a member of the FMDiSC board and the coordinator for this movie. Thrilled to see everyone. We are going to, during the presentations, we're going to ask you to mute yourself so that background noises don't get in. There's a quick hint. If you want to briefly speak, just hold down your space bar. It temporarily disables your mute. After our first presentation, we're going to break out into separate rooms, and we're going to do it a little differently this month. Marcel is going to pick a room, and anyone who has further questions about his presentation is welcome to join him, and the other rooms are also free choice. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. This morning, we're going to hear from Marcel Moré, and Marcel, I hope I said that correctly. He is from Germany, not Austria, and I'm sorry for that error. That was my error. He will have to pronounce his company name for you. I'm not going to do it. He's a tech veteran with roots in software development since the 80s. He's experienced in design, programming, web development, marketing, and consulting, and he's been in FileMaker since version 2. He works as a FileMaker developer and a business consultant, doing custom solutions like a lot of us. He's also a speaker at European FileMaker conferences and a contributing writer for the German FileMaker magazine. I find it very interesting that the German community is able to support a magazine where we can't anymore in the United States. And he runs the FileMaker developer meeting in Germany. So Marcel, please share your desktop and take it away. Oh, very good. We see it great.
Okay. Yes, hello everybody, and thank you, Lynn, for the introduction. Also, thank you to Jonathan for the invitation to join your meeting. I've been here some few times as a guest in the last year, so it's an honor for me to be here today as a presenter. And we got an interesting topic, the future of FileMaker. We have some interesting, sometimes challenging times now around us in the world, but also in regards to Claris and some major announcement we heard this year in April and later in September. So it's just time to dive into it and examine what it means for us as developers. But first, let's give me a short introduction. Lynn already said a lot of it. So I'm kind of veteran in the FileMaker space like you are. And doing my business as a self-employed, Lynn asked about my company name. It's just my personal name, Marcel Moré, French name, French origins. But I live in Germany, and the information design is just a part of my description, what I do for my clients. So I work mainly as a consultant and have developed many projects where FileMaker played a main part of it in the last 3 decades. So you can find me on Twitter in my personal account, or the Timemacher is a very rough translation of FileMaker. There is a FileMaker related stuff. And Lynn already said it. I was announced as a guy from Austria. That's not quite correct, but I spent my summer holidays in Austria, so I can show you some nice pictures. I have some interests besides the technical stuff in my life, so I enjoy traveling and hiking and doing photography. If you want to have a look, you can find me on Flickr or Instagram. So let's just jump into the presentation. We have about 45 minutes for the presentation itself. I will talk a bit of the background and categorization where FileMaker fits into the whole IT space. We have FileMaker in transition, which is the main part of it. And we take the chance to get some outlook into the possible future, what might expect us in the years to come. And we will have some time left to do Q&A and open discussion. So let's right start, and I hope you enjoy my German accent. So to have a look at the present, it is oftentimes worse to have a look at the past. And we will do so if we look back in IT history. I try to condense it down to a simple chart here. I see 3 cycles of IT development, and in the former times, we had some kind of command line computing. Later came desktop computing, as we mainly knew it today. And it's the part where we all developed our skills in the FileMaker space. And nowadays we have this cloud computing thing, and it has a lot of impact to FileMaker and our daily work. So if we put a timeline on it, I would suggest that the command line computing starts in the early 60s. That's where all the interesting stuff was invented that is still around here today, like Unix, like the command line, like all the other basic foundations of IT. Later came desktop computing in the 80s. That was the time when Steve Jobs had this famous presentation at Palo Alto Research Center, and later invented the Macintosh. And then in the 19th, the internet became really a mainstream thing. And a few years later, as people and businesses understood how to handle the whole internet thing, the cloud computing age began, and it lasts till today and any further. So if we take a look at the characteristics of what this means, these 3 cycles of IT development, I put some perspectives on it. If we look at it in the perspective of computer architectures, command line computing was host-based. This was a time when command line was a way to access this whole thing. Later came the desktop computing with client server. You had a client computer on your desktop, so the name desktop computing. And for the first time, we got graphical user interface to interact with the computer. And nowadays it's all distributed and mobile. You got your iPhone in your pocket, and the whole devices are distributed, and they are talking to each other and to the cloud service with APIs. So it's different paradigms how all things worked out. And the host-based thing depended on the history behind it. There were a batch of punch cards, and so you can only do one command after each other. Later came these new input devices like mouse and keyboard where you can interact, and nowadays the mobile devices. So it has impacts on the data storage and how IT worked behind the scenes also. In the command line computing age, we had similar simple data sets. Later came files with graphical representations and more complex documents. And today we have kind of data streams because everything is real-time and distributed on different locations. And so we need different approaches how to handle all this. We had batch input-output in the first stages. Then came import-export functions like we knew in FileMaker, and in cloud computing we have the need of some kind of replication or syncing mechanisms. So you see there is a more sophisticated way to handle all this. And if we look at the tools, in the command line computing, we have this command line interpreters and compilers. If you write an app or a program at this time, you had to prepare everything in advance. You have to compile it and look if the compiler can understand every command that you gave, and then you can run the program. In the age of desktop computing, there was something new. The rapid development tools evolved, like we have FileMaker, for example, and there are even script languages. That means that we have not the need of a compiler to do this work in advance, but the script language allows to have an interactive approach, to do something, click a button, and something happens in between. And in cloud computing, it's a bit different. We have a lot of IDEs and frameworks, and I think the main difference to the script languages we knew from desktop computing is now in cloud computing. In the age of internet, there are many open source languages that are mainstream. Think of it like PHP or JavaScript. that do not belong to a single vendor, but it's kind of open source. Everyone can use it, and it's for free, and you get really rich resources on the web if you want to dive into and learn something. So if we look further to some examples of tools, for sure you all know the shell, where you can type in commands in the Unix operating system, or we have SQL for databases. So there work mainly commands. You could have to learn the commands to access your data. And that was also a change when desktop computing evolved, that we had another approach to this data. We have FileMaker. There are similar products like Access or First Dimension that are still alive for also 3 decades. And all before that started, there was perhaps Smalltalk or some similar systems that gave a direction how this desktop thing can work out. And in cloud computing, we have very different and specialized kind of tools. We have tools like Airtable for database in the web. We have kind of things like Tableau for a more graphical output, or things like Google AppSheet, distributed calculations, or the whole infrastructure behind it, like AWS or Azure and whatever. So there's a big space of different services in cloud computing, whereas desktop were focused on single tools that you can buy and own and work with. So if it comes to FileMaker, let's have a look how FileMaker fits into these cycles of IT development. To give an example, if we look at FileMaker Pro, there's a script workspace or calculation dialog. All these things are like giving commands, like in the command line age. There's even some script steps to execute SQL. We have now JavaScript or AppleScript in former times. We have data formats like JSON or XML. This is all more command line orientated. Then if it comes to desktop computing, FileMaker Pro fits even also there. We have the relationship graph. That is a big further development of that SQL thing we had before. So you can have some kind of visible kind of thing with what you see is what you get. The same thing is true with access to the data. You have layouts and fields where you can see the data and arrange it in a way that fits your needs and designs. And even find mode, it's a big shift in the paradigm. Former times you have to learn some commands to find your data, and now we have find mode where you can type in directly into the fields and get some result instantly. And later came these more rich document formats for container fields. You can store PDFs or other kinds of stuff. You have the web viewer, charts and apps. So that is a part of desktop computer where FileMaker fits in really, really well. And now if it comes to cloud computing, there are some things on the horizon already. We have this script step, insert from URL and curl options to access data APIs or from other services. FileMaker itself has a data API and a script step to access local data in this way. And there are new things on the horizon like OData or even the new Claris Studio integration that clearly is part of this cloud computing thing. The same thing is true for the server. If we look at FileMaker server, we have this command line interface where you can type in commands to start and stop and open databases and such things. But if it comes to a desktop, we have even an admin console with a rich interface where everything is displayed and organized in a clear way, and you have real time, can see what happens. And so this is a big difference to this command line approach that is also accessible. And now when it comes to cloud computing, we have this FileMaker Server Admin API. So we see that even there's something prepared to play a part in the cloud world. There's even a whole new product, the FileMaker Cloud Server. And now when it comes to the new announcement of Claris, we have this Claris Studio and Claris Connect. It's been around for a while, but it clearly shows the direction where the whole thing will develop further. So this is the FileMaker space, and the questions for us, if we look into the future, is what tools does FileMaker already bring to the table? And we saw just a minute ago that there are some aspects of it in every of these 3 cycles to fit in. which paradigms and architectures are supported, and what is well solved. And I think the main part is the desktop computing part, because FileMaker was born in this space and developed further for 3 decades. And what is perhaps poorly solved or not solved at all. And these are the questions that are interesting to have a look in the future. And how well is FileMaker prepared for this new age to come now, or we even live in it? So to sum it up, to give a short word for it, what is the main aspect of each of these 3 cycles? Command line computing, everything had to prepare in advance. It was process sequential. Desktop computing brought us interactive way to work with the applications, and even in real time. The cloud computing adds further on the on-demand thing, that any service could be added in your solution, and it's distributed. So this was a bit of foundational view to understand the past, and now we want to get into where we stand right now in the present. And the question for us as developers is, where do we stand as developers, as the person who makes this work with the tool that we know? And perhaps we can frame it in a way: yesterday I was a cool FileMaker developer, today I might be part of some kind of problem circle. It's not really fair to frame it this way, you know what I mean. But if we are honest to ourselves and we look into the mirror in the morning, there are some parts that need to be addressed. We have no young developers in our space for a long time. It's a topic on every developer conference I can remember for the last 10 or 15 years. So we are getting older. We have large legacy projects. They also get older. Some projects for 25 years. It's hard to manage it. The technical depth inside it, we developed another way 20 years ago than we did 10 years ago, and another way we do today, and perhaps we need tomorrow. So there's a lot of change. There are some persistent bugs in our tool. We have found a lot of workarounds to make it all work nevertheless, and it plays out quite well. And but we are very dependent on the manufacturer. And now that Claris is in a transition and there's a lot of change and a lot of new announcements, it's time for us to look into it. And there's a change in the IT world as well. We have just saw it in the past, these 3 cycles, and there will be new cycles to come. So if we look 30 years back, let's look 30 years ahead, and maybe there are some interesting things changing also. Nevertheless, still, FileMaker is one of the coolest tools. That is one main reason we sit here together today, and that we had the connection to FileMaker for 3 decades. I don't know really any other tool that comes hardly close to it. So FileMaker has a lot of potential, and it's still one of the main tools I need to develop my projects today. So to sum it up, experienced developers mature with their tools, and young developers are getting right into cloud computing, because the detour via desktop seems too cumbersome, too expensive. If you think at license costs and all these topics, it's not that easy for a young developer to spend some 500 or 1,000 bucks just to learn about a tool. They go right into the web and find some nice things and develop something, and they don't think about if there is a very good tool they could start with. They do what everyone else does, and so we are in a different situation, like we were in 20 or 30 years ago, and what young developers do right now when they come into the IT space. So you see there are some challenging topics, and I would ask you today here to get some kind of mood barometer. If you see more pessimistic or optimistic, I know you're Americans, so everything is optimistic for sure. In Germany or in Europe, hardly different way to look about things. But let's have a short poll, a live poll. I prepared a URL for you. I put it into the chat here so that we can, you can just click on the link. There's this etc.ph.sqpj. Just put it into your browser. And in the meantime,
oh, you're not going to be very popular at Claris after this.
So we have some, you can vote both parts of it. You can vote pessimistic and optimistic. And it's interesting. Yes, it seems like it is quite balanced. Oh, okay, optimistic wins. No, pessimistic is a bit in front of it. So it is interesting to see all this. But we are here together. We are in the same situation, and we can talk truly about it. And I even have another question. So the balance is not quite an ideal. I see we can talk a bit about it later. And I have a second question for you, just to get an impression. How long have you been in the FileMaker space? Is it less than 5 years, more than 10 or 20 or even 30 years? What is the spectrum of the audience here tonight or today? Okay, yes, I see. It's very similar that we had it on the conference here in Germany in June when I gave this presentation for the first time. So most of us are the veterans that are 20 or 30 years around. But there are some fresh parts even here. So that's good to know. And there are some reason for this. And I will address this topic in the presentation in a few minutes. Okay, just nice. Let me put it in a screenshot here to preserve this for later. Okay. Thank you, everyone, to take part in this quick poll. Continue with the presentation now. To arrange my Zoom window. I see it. Okay. So when it comes to FileMaker, we have talked a lot now of the challenges and the past time, how everything came and where FileMaker fits in. And if we look at the product itself, there are some interesting things also. So we have 30 years plus of FileMaker right now. You know the Claris platform. You might remember all these colored icons here. It's a bit of, oh, I'm missing some words, how you call it, if you think of the good old times. So we had these kind of early products, and later on we had some new products like Claris Go and the cloud parts. And let's have a look what the characteristics of these steps inside the Claris platform. Everything started in, I think, 1990, when there was a name FileMaker Pro for the first time. There had been some products before, but this is the time when FileMaker came to the space. And it took about 10 years until it was there was a FileMaker server. In addition, you could share files before with peer-to-peer sharing in FileMaker Pro, but when the server came in, things got more professional. You could build larger solutions, and there was some kind of professional management behind that the IT team could do for you. And then later, even about 10 years later, we got in a third product in the FileMaker space. It was FileMaker Go. You could put in to your iPhone. The early versions were a bit cumbersome, but later it took on and got really interesting, even when the iPad was announced. Then in 3 years later, we got WebDirect because we were in the middle of cloud computing already, and FileMaker tried to address this. So we got access on the client side, but there was still something missing on the server side. And it was 2017 when the FileMaker Cloud came to the space. FileMaker just put the FileMaker server onto some AWS instance and gave us a way to access it in a simple way so that you can make sense of it with FileMaker Go and WebDirect. Then later in 2019, Claris Connect was announced. It was an announcement and not so much was visible until today. And more announcements came in 2020 when the Claris Cloud changed and the Claris Next was announced. There was a lot of PowerPoint in these times, but no one really understood how it could happen, how the technical backgrounds will evolve, and how all this could fit together. Because if you look at it, it looks quite complex. So there had to happen something. And I think Claris really managed to organize this in the latest announcements. In this year, they announced the new Claris platform. On the left side of the chart, the Claris products are just rebranding, but the right side of the part here is an interesting thing. They have a new concept for the Claris Cloud. They have this Claris Studio for the first time, and it's kind of integration of all these formally announced things like FileMaker Next, like Claris Connect, and all these more diffuse things that you could not understand really. And now that makes a lot of sense, but it's still an announcement. We just heard in September that all these things should be available right now. So let's dive into it. Now comes the future part. Claris is in transition, FileMaker is in transition, and let's have a look at the platform to understand all of this. Should be very easy and clear, I think. But Claris came around with all these new words and hubs and ESS Plus and MongoDB and Docker, Cloud, Draco Engine, on-premise Studio, CSS. So everything is clear right now, I think. Yes, it's a bit complicated. And so let's try to dissect all these different parts and bring it into a whole picture that it is easier to understand what it really means. So we had this chart before, where we just saw the evolvement of the whole Claris platform. And if we put it into a functional view, we could see there are some groups of where these products fit in. We had this rapid development platform as a rich client we knew before all the years. It is now this Claris Pro and Claris Go. It is deeply connected into the operating systems that they rely on. We have this Claris server we could operate on-prem. And a bit aside of it, there is some kind of WebDirect that does not really fit in, but it is connected to this part of the platform. And then we have this former Claris Cloud, where we had the cloud server and an app data layer, but it was the same thing as the Claris server we had on-prem. So it's just the same product in a cloud space that we connect our rich clients to, or we could connect WebDirect to. So it evolved a bit, and then came some different things. Claris Connect was acquired and integrated, but it was really in its own space. It sounds interesting to be able to access some third-party cloud services with their API connectors, but there's no real connection to this former FileMaker world. So there's something missing in between. Okay, some of you managed to build own API accesses, but it's really cumbersome and not what Claris promised us at this time. Now, again, some new things come into place. This is Claris Studio, and it's accessed by web browser only, and you can have some SIM client on the web, and you don't even need to have a license. So that's different to this left side where we have this rich clients where you have to buy a license first. The Claris Studio for the first time allows us to distribute and collect data in the web browser. And you only need a Claris Studio account to make this happen. And now some interesting thing happens. Claris introduced this MongoDB thing in the middle. And this is like a cloud data layer. And there's a connection to the former Draco engine. They call it ESS+. And what it does is that it syncs your data between two different data layers. So you have your data layer on your server that you can access with FileMaker or Claris Pro. And you have this cloud layer of data where the Claris Studio and Claris Collect relies on. And both of the worlds are now connected together. The rich clients have this deeply integration with the OSs, and the other world, other side of Studio and Connect only relies on the web browser. So there's a main difference between it. But if we look at these vertical arrows, it is interesting that for the first time we get a whole integration upon all these different layers of the tech stack that is involved. And that sounds interesting if it comes to future possibilities, because it looks like you can have something in your existing solutions in FileMaker or Claris Pro, and there's a way, an easy way to let all these data flow through all these stages and even connect to third-party cloud services. And that sounds really interesting because it opens up a whole new world for existing solutions, and it opens up new opportunities in the thin client world where people come with a web browser and just want to put in some data or read a dashboard or whatever. So if we look at it right now, there's the rebranding of the former product lineup FileMaker. We have the cloud server, and what's new is there will be a free version of Claris Pro. That's interesting because it lowers the barrier for new talent to come into our space. If everyone could download the Claris Pro thing onto its desktop computer and play around with it, and perhaps there's some good information for learning, then this could be open up the space for new people to come in. And then we have this Claris Studio sync with, at the moment, basic forms, web forms, and we have also charts and some dashboard elements. They told us that it will evolve further in the future, but that is what we got right now. And they put some kind of cloud account management on top of it. It's a bit challenging to think of the implication that might come with it. We have a look at it in a few minutes. But for the main part, this is what Claris announced in September this year. And if we have a look at what it should come later, there is still Claris Connect that is not integrated right now, but I think they will manage to integrate it very tightly in this whole space, so that you have an unified user interface, that you have simple possibilities to organize your flows and your scripts. I think of it like a bit of a script workspace for the studio part, for this web cloud part, like we have in FileMaker with our scripting engine. So it's perhaps time for later. There's not much to be seen right now, but it makes much sense to think of it in this direction.
Marcel, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Does that mean that in the future we could connect FileMaker server, like an on-prem server, to Claris Studio through Claris Connect?
It's a good question, and I will just jump into it, because if I think to the future, in the technical term, Claris already announced that everything is ready for Docker. They had it in their presentations, in the tech talks, and Docker is some kind of deployment infrastructure. And if they do it in the right way, it could open up some really good opportunities, even for us to go this path in a future world. Because if you put anything in a Docker container, then you could deploy it on a Claris servers like they have. You could put it in your own public cloud on AWS, or you have a private cloud, or you could put it on your data center on premise. It will open up a lot of possibilities for deployment. And if you think it further, they could do even the studio part of it, the Connect and the Claris Studio into kind of Docker container. It's a lot of guessing around now. They announced nothing like this, but if you think of it in technical terms, it would make a lot of sense. And perhaps even that they align the data layer in a similar way, because in this at this moment we have the Draco engine in the FileMaker side and the MongoDB engine on the cloud side, and it does not really fit together. They have to do the syncing with the ESS Plus, but I think it is possible in the future that they evolve it further to have a common data layer for both of the worlds. And so I don't know if that's on their plan, but if I was Claris, I would clearly go in this direction, because it would be the easiest way to convert existing solutions, and would be the easiest way to manage all these things in different deployments.
Do you have a survey that asks us if we trust FileMaker to do Claris
Let us,
the right way?
yes, good question. Let us please put it in after the presentation, because I will address some of the critical points right now. If we come back to present and do some aftermath of the Claris announcement, there is quite a different space. So there are the good things, of course. The cloud thing is getting real. They talked a lot about it in the years before without getting clear what they want. And now there's a clear direction what the cloud thing is meaning and what you can make of it for your customers. We got the freemium model, and that is a real game changer, I think, because it opens up the space for new talent to go to get into the FileMaker community or the studio community, or even what will there be in the future. And we have even the platform license. So if you buy a license for your customers in the future, you get the whole tool set. You make one decision and then you get the whole platform. And I think that's a really good thing, because if I remember in my project in the past, the clients bought the FileMaker server, and then it came to iOS, and then they said, oh, I need to buy another license. Why should I? So we missed it out. And the decisions are not driven by technical terms, but by licensing costs. And in the future, we will have one license to fit it all. And I think it's a good way to frame this to make it easier to make business decisions on it. And we got bug fixes, and I think for us, from a developer view, this is a really important part. We must rely on a really rock-solid platform, and even if we want to go further in the future, this is really good news if they take their homework serious. Then there is some bad news also. There's really bad communication. We have a lot of confusion right now in the community. There are many open questions. And no one knew who was addressed by the latest announcement. Are we all still the target group, or are they talking to someone new? It's not ideal how they made it. And the partners feel left out. They announced new products that were not even visible. And I would have expected, as a 20-year plus partner, that I might get something in advance to play around with it, to make decisions for my customers. There was nothing. They even wanted me to buy something out of the dark in advance, even not knowing what this is. And this is not a way to do business with the partners. So this could really be better. And also the Claris Connect thing, we tried for 3 or 4 years now to make some sense out of it, and there was no information, there was no way to access it. It's a real mess. So this is a really bad part of it. And there's poor marketing. They make this rebranding. I'm really happy about this, because if you talk to people, business people, they and you come with FileMaker, they say, "Oh, FileMaker, yes, I knew this 20 years ago when I was at the university. Is it still existing?" And now, okay, they made the change. Everything is Claris now. But people think of FileMaker as a toy database they knew 20 years ago. And now they go into this rebranding with a lot of effort and a lot of dollars behind it. And everything we get is a toy database in the web. Why? This could even be better. So, and there's small visibility. I remember the latest recognition of FileMaker in a major German tech journal years ago. And they didn't even understood what the product was. They just announced some PR that Claris gave them. So there's really some opportunity to do it better. And then there's even the ugly part of the announcements. They promised us before that we don't break things. If I remember the meetings in April, they said, okay, FileMaker, we do not touch it. We know that's your business. We won't break anything. We will allow you to go further with it. And now, just a minute before the announcement in September, they said, oh yeah, we have a new file format, but there's only one-way conversion. So it's a help for us to do deployments. What should we do with it? And even further, there's a deletion of all user accounts if you convert your conversion to the Claris world. And there are many sophisticated solutions in the space where own user account systems are built on top of the Claris FileMaker user account. So if they delete it, it totally breaks our solutions. And when it comes to special things like technical users for API access or whatever, there's even no way today that they showed us how that will go in the future. But I think they will need to think it over and bring us some new possibilities to it. But if we look at it right now, it looks really cumbersome. And then there's a really game, how you call it, a deal breaker. There's a need for the online connection. You could not even open the Claris Studio if you have no online connection. And especially in Europe, we have strong legislation for data privacy. Many of our customers bought FileMaker because they could do it on-prem, and now everything should be online. And that's not the way how many of the projects are deployed today. And so we clearly need a path to for the future to make it happen on-prem, or to put something in between to address this thing with the license server. I think there's some political thing for them to address the licensing and to have a view on it, but from the technical view, it's a real deal breaker, and we have demand Claris to change something there.
Hey, can I ask a question? Take a breath for a second.
Please put it behind. It's just a few minutes, and then we are ready. And
well, but I have to clap for you. I'm trying to encourage you.
Yes, thank you.
I'm trying to clap for you, right?
Yeah, we are here today to talk about the real situation. So I think that fits in. And I don't want to be unpolite in regards to Claris, but some things have to be said. And so we, as a developer, if we look at it, it means we have an unclear upgrade path for our existing projects, and that is the ugliest part of all of it. I think there will be solutions to address this, but that needs better communication, and they already promised they will speak to us and have new formats to meet us and meet our demands, but it has to happen. So this could be better. And let me just, to finish all this, put in something positive. If I had a dream how Claris should do this for the future of the product and for the future of all of us, I have some very simple 3 points to address this. First thing, Mac App Store. If you look to a Mac App Store right now and you type in Claris, that's what you get. Yes. It's really poor. Not even FileMaker is in there. Okay, they just announced they will put it in there, the premium version. But come on, Claris, you're part of Apple. You're an Apple company. That could be better. if I open Mac App Store, I would expect something like this, a big branded some kind of presentation that points out every good aspect and functionality of the Claris world, and even just a quick start to download your free version. And this is the right way to bring new people in. And it's lost opportunity if they do not use this, even if they are part of Apple. And as well for the mobile app store, they want to play in the same range with all these other heavy cloud vendors, but then they have to get on top of it and really show this in this space where all the other players already are. So this is step one of my dream, to really make good marketing and make the product visible with all its strengths and good functionality that is already in there. Second thing, when it comes to Claris Connect, I was really excited about Claris Connect when it came to the space, but as I already said, it was not possible to test drive it or anything. And instead, I looked at the other vendors. I tried with Node-RED. I had a look at Zapier, and I was really excited what they have. They have thousands of connectors and plugins already, and there's a big community, good documentation, all of this. And if you could have a look at Claris Connect right now, there are about 60 connectors or something like that. And that is a really important part here. If they want this to get traction, they have to put in really some efforts to grow this API thing, because that is where the cloud age is happening. And so if we get good connectors in this Claris Connect part, and there's some kind of Google search perhaps for it to find the right thing, then I think they have really good chances to play a part of in all this. And then the third and last thing, I call it platform extras. It has nothing to do that much with technical terms, but how they address new users. If you come to the Claris website right now, they have good rebranding. They have some clear arguments how all this is structured and what you can make with it. But I think there are some things missing here. First thing would be some better structured learning resources. They have all this, okay, I know, and there's these trainings, Richard Carlton is here today, you have all these good video shows on YouTube. And so we got a lot of this in the FileMaker community space, but the usual thing, if you are interested in a new platform, you go to the website of the vendor, you click the documentation, you click some first steps and introductions, and then you get a sense of what this platform can do for you. And if they will address new users, that is something they really need. A strong documentation, not even for beginners, but also for advanced developers, some kind of thing that they have in this Claris community space, but it could be much more better. And second thing is deployment. We just addressed this point a few minutes ago when it came to this whole Docker thing, and I would dream of some really easy way to address deployment on the local IT team for our solutions. That Claris deploys are some kind of Docker templates for installation, perhaps a local accounts proxy where all these things you have to be online to open Claris could be solved, a local proxy server that manage the licenses, and you can this can update once a month with the Claris cloud, but you can have local access on your local network, and or deploy the whole Claris platform in your private cloud. And the last thing, real game changer for us would be to have some easy way to deploy our solution to the app stores. I mean, the Apple App Store or the iOS App Store, that would be a game changer. If they provide us a tool that we can throw our solution in, fill out a form, push a button, and a week later our app is in the App Store. That is some kind I would be dreaming of if I think of the FileMaker future. So we get back to reality. And I think the main thing for Claris is to provide a clear path. they provided us much information in the last months, but it was far away from being clear to who they are talking. Why is this change? What does it mean? When will it come? When it is really available for us or our clients? And that could be much more clear to solve many of these issues. And to put it in one simple answer, I would say to Claris, just build great products and give us access to it, because then every of us will be happy, we and our customers, and Claris will be happy if we sell more products for them and generate new projects. So to put it short, that is what I would expect in the future, and then I would be glad. But in the meantime, I think we have some topics to talk about. So thank you very much for your interest, and thank you for having me here today. I will give back to Lynn right now to introduce the moderation for the Q&A and for the breakout rooms. And so I say thank you and give back.
Okay, we have a few minutes for discussion here in the main room. So questions, remember to unmute yourself. Anyone?
I want to just pipe in. Marcel, fantastic presentation. It's always validating to hear other people say things that you sense or feel or identify with. So many of the points that you raised, some of the questions you were asking are also, we're going to kind of talk about that later in the meeting with our, I would imagine some of the stuff's going to come up in our panel discussion, also in our survey discussion. One of the things that's interesting when that you alluded to with Claris Connect. I think Claris Connect is a perfect sort of snapshot. It's this wonderful little upstart product that got purchased, and then it was now Claris's to do with as they would. And notwithstanding, we've got 70, 60 connectors compared to 700 with something like Zapier. There's a number of just very simple things that Claris can do for free that help raise the awareness. I reached out to Claris, I think it was earlier this year, and said, hey, you guys aren't on Capterra, G2, Trust Radius, Gartner. These are free software review sites. And it take an administrative assistant a half an hour to copy and paste the marketing blurb and shove it up there and make it visible to people in the world. And I think they have remedied one or two of those sites. But there's a handful of things that you'd go, this isn't about budget, or we don't have the time, or it's an engineering. This is literally just paying attention to getting the word out in free vehicles that don't take anything but a handful of minutes to give attention to.
Yes, of course, yes.
Anyone else got comments or suggestions? And
at Dig FM last night, Steve Romick said, it's changing so fast they can't keep up with the documentation. And I agree.
Yes, but they already have so much documentation. Perhaps it's a bit about how they present it to us or how they make it available to newcomers. And so why don't they have a real team to keep track of this? It should not be the work of the developers. They should have a good documentation team to build this documentation space for them. And so there are some parts that could be improved.
I would put documentation first. I mean, if you're going to build whatever the heck you're going to build, I mean, wouldn't you have documented what you're going to build, and then you build it, and then you release the documentation that you use to build what you build? And in a Zen cone, it's if it is not documented, did it really ship?
Yeah.
Yeah, generally, real quick, I don't David can back me up on this, but or Wim. The reality with Claris is that they're going so fast right now that the engineers probably have some internal engineering documentation. And over the years, sometimes we've seen that, but they like to abstract the engineering kind of planning documentation from what the developers see. So there's like two sides of the operation. There's the planning of what we're going to build, agile in the next 3 weeks in the Scrum session. And then there's the what the developers get to see. And the developer back end of it is Steve Romick, and the guy's already overworked like 12 hours a day. So yeah, so there's a challenge with that.
Yeah, good point. But they announced that we would have a quarterly Q&A with the developers. So I'm really keen to see it because it opens up an opportunity for us experienced developers on the user side to talk to the FileMaker engineers, and that should happen even more often. So I think there's really a chance on getting to the right points, that they do not give us some bells and whistles, but address the right topics that we need to fulfill our projects. Any more questions?
Todd has one.
Okay.
Todd?
Corey had his hand up.
Yeah, I think Corey was first.
Oh, okay.
Well, my question or observation is, in the past, FileMaker's development process was rather opaque. And I think the new administration has come in and sort of opened that up. How much of that is just us seeing the kitchen? Now, that's not to deny that the kitchen is a bit of a mess. It seems from the outside, and you know that's part of work. But how much of this is just apparent to us as developers who are making the effort to look into the kitchen, and how much is apparent to, say, the end user? I'll take my answer off the air.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to me like end users have any clue what's coming. Okay.
First of all, really great presentation.
Thank you.
I think it's super important to understand sort of the context in where FileMaker was developed and why changes were necessary. I don't think we appreciate that enough. They were in a tough spot. They're in a tough spot with the current client server architecture. It just isn't going to make it into the future, into the cloud. So I think you did a great job of sort of laying that case out. And I think you also did a great job of pointing out where all the problems are today. And there are quite a few. And I voted optimistic, but I would say optimistic because they had to do something and they had to do it fast. And they are doing something and they're doing it fast. So that puts me, I would put myself at like 50.1% because the challenges are immense here that they're having to go through. And so one thing I would just say is that a lot of the technical things that you brought up are certainly things that they are aware of and that they plan to roll out and that they're hoping to get to. So it's not that they just are dumb and they're not thinking about this. It's just that they can't do it all at once. Where I have a lot more quibble with them is really on some of the areas that Dave brought up. That there are a lot of low-hanging fruit that they're just missing here about how to improve things for the current market. And my concerns are not that given enough time, well, I should say I have two buckets of concerns. One is, can they actually pull all this stuff technically off in a short enough amount of time? And I don't know that. I don't think anybody knows that. But the more immediate concern is, how does this community actually get any benefit from all this new stuff in this transition period? And I think you also did a great job of really laying out those concerns there, and they're real. And some of them, Dave, I think made a really good case about, and some of them are just, it's tough. In a market transition like this, it's really, really tough. For those of us who have invested in huge investments in the old layer, and yes, there's this promise of this new thing, but how do we get from there to there? And I frankly have a lot of concerns there. But anyway, great, really great presentation. And I'm glad I'm going to hand the link out to everybody at our team to watch. So I think you did a really great job explaining that. So
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Todd. Chris Moyer has his hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to share some information. Heidi and I were just at the FM Guru conference in Rome, and Marie Normand was there, and we had a meeting with her. And she was asking, what should we do to sort of get everybody on the same page with Studio. And, there's this sort of one initiative that's going out to addressing, the business owner persona, if you will. And she's like, what should we be doing with the partner group and FBAs? And we, to Marcel's point about, we'd like a quarterly update. It's like, you don't want to open this up and there's been no real communication, no real demonstration of the limits of this new platform. And it's like, you do not want, 1,400 developers all loading up a 1 or 2 million row table into Studio to see if it handles it. It's like, you need to have a lot more practical information about what are the capabilities of this new platform, what can it do? And it would be better if you got everybody into a room and had another kitchen, which you haven't had in years, and we all got to push the thing, let's drop millions of rows on it and see how well it performs. Can it chart that? Can it summarize that in the spreadsheet view? And let's beat on it. And she was all for that, and she's advocating for it. So I think we will be hearing a lot more about that. And she was asking, where should it be? Should it be in the center of the country? Or, we could get more engineers if we had it near the headquarters. And so, Heidi's and my vote was, let's have it near headquarters so we can get as many engineers in there as we can. But some, not a hackathon exactly, but certainly let's beat on the thing and let's kick around use cases and, put some feedback in about what future directions of the product would be and what might we want to see. And so I just wanted to let everybody know that that's in the wind, and, we'll probably be hearing something more about that, hopefully in the next month or two.
Yes, good point, Chris.
Great.
Yes, I think the main thing is the communication. It's not the technical things. We have to wait until a certain time to evolve for the technical part, but the communication is really essential here for us to understand where we stand and where it will go and which steps they plan, and so they could do better. We have to be patient. We have no other chance, but they could make it easier for us to lower some concerns.
Well, Marie seems to want to be that conduit. So if anybody wants to +1 those ideas, then you should reach out to her.
Yeah.
Great. I am going to take this to the breakout rooms. Marcel, if you would go to breakout room 1 when the choice comes up, and anyone who wants to continue this discussion, follow Marcel. The rest of you, the popular kids, pick a room each. All right. All right. I'll see you back here in 15 to 20 minutes. So there we go. And I'm going to stop recording.